Go.
I welcome all of you this evening. We're going to hear from Charles Millikan. Let me just say a few words of introduction for him. Charles is the Vice President of Spiritual Care and Values Integration at the Methodist System in Houston. He was born, in fact, in Methodist Hospital, and now is back serving there. How wonderful that must be. And he served as a pastor throughout East Texas for many years, and has been a member of the Bishop's Cabinet of the Texas Annual Methodist Conference, and has a whole number of awards he's received over the years. He received the Distinguished Alumnus Award from Southern Methodist University, where he graduated and received his Doctor of Divinity degree, Master of Divinity degree, at Perkins School of Theology. I assume that's in Dallas? Yes, it is. And he also received an award from Toastmasters International. He was the Distinguished Toastmaster and recognized for Outstanding Club President, and also for the Eastern Division Lieutenant Governor of District 25. He's done all sorts of things, also collected a whole lot of money for Methodist Church in Galveston, where he served at the Moody Church in Galveston, was able to grow the endowment fund for that church, as well as even start new facilities, an $11 million addition to the Moody House there. So we're very honored to have Charles Millikan here, and we'll look forward to hearing what he has to say with us. Thank you. And you need to push that button on the inside of it, unless it's already on.
Okay.
Now let's get us going. Hold it down for a couple minutes.
Are we on?
Don't
hear you.
Let's see. Let me look at it and see if it's green. There we are.
Okay. Good afternoon. Well, I have quite a journey, and it's one that began as a young man when I really thought I wanted to be a medical doctor. And I'd studied and done the chemistry and the math and all I needed to go to Rice University. But then I decided, I heard a call from God, and I changed my directions, and instead made a call to the ministry. And what a great sense of humor God has, in that now I've been so long divided, both piety and vital knowledge, to suddenly find myself in a world of medicine. And so it's really quite exciting. So I want to tell you this afternoon something of the journey that's brought us to this point, and then also talk about the challenges that are facing faith-based hospitals in our system. Some personal information on me is that my parents were Herman and Geraldine Millikan. He was a longtime pastor in the Texas Conference. I am a fourth-generation Methodist minister in Texas. My father, my grandfather, and my great-grandfathers were all pastors in the Methodist Church. And my parents have since passed. And I was born at the Methodist Hospital some years ago. And I got my education here at Cypress, Texas, and then later at Southwestern and University, SMU, and Drew. And I'm married. Laura and I were married in 1970 at Marvin Church in Tyler, and we have 3 children and 4 grandchildren. And so what has happened is that in my ministry, I was ordained at 23 years of age. They did that back then. I'm not sure that can happen today with the rules that we have with the Book of Discipline. But after a year of Perkins School of Theology, I was ordained a deacon. And then after 2 years of probationary period, I was ordained an elder in 1973 by Bishop Kenneth Copeland. And then I served a variety of churches, from Winona in the center in the Tyler district to New Caney and Porter, Wesley Church Tyler, St. Peter's and Katy. I was the second pastor to that congregation, a very young congregation, grew rapidly. I was the pastor of Seabrook at the time that we had the NASA accident, as you may remember, the Challenger. And we knew a good number of those astronauts. Later at Pollard Memorial in Tyler, then at Moody Church in Galveston for 8 years, and then I served on the Bishop's Cabinet, 2 different districts over a 4-year period, 2 years in Palestine and 2 years in the Houston South District. And then as I was completing my 2nd year, I was invited to come and be a part of the Methodist Hospital System. And there's my birth certificate of all things. Laura was kind enough to frame it. I have it in my office. And so it is bona fide, and when you know that Josie Roberts, who of course was the superintendent of the hospital at the time, her picture is right across from my office, and she's watching me every day. So there we are. And of course, I was at Southwestern in the mid-'60s. I was at SMU in the late '60s and early '70s, and then at Drew University in the 1980s. And then, of course, you can't be in Galveston. You're either a BOI, born on the island, or you're an IBC, Islander by choice. And so I was awarded an Islander by choice designation by the church when I left. And then my ministry began to take a turn as I left Moody and was on the cabinet, and then joined the Methodist Hospital System. We have quite a story. Our hospital was organized in 1919 by Dr. Oscar Norsworthy, who was a physician. And people were literally dying in the streets of the Spanish flu, and he opened up his home. And after a couple of years of having people in his home, he went to see his pastors, and a number of them in town, St. Paul's and First Church Houston, and talked about the possibility of whether the church would ever want to own a hospital. And of course, the conversations began with Bishop Sam Hay. Of course, later, A. Frank Smith, who was later elected a bishop sometime later, was also a part of this conversation. And what began was the Methodist Hospital was officially chartered in 1922. So our date really goes back to 1919, which of course is 93 years ago. And of course, what's happened in that length of time is we've moved from our building at Fannin and San Jacinto and Rosalie, not far from downtown, to the Methodist Hospital System as we know it today at the Texas Medical Center. We located there in 1950. Now, we have a unique relationship with the Methodist Hospital in that we were established by the conference and we're still owned by the annual conference. 60% of our board members are United Methodists, either clergy or laity. And of course, we take pride in quality health care. We have understanding that belief of healing through lives, actions, and words of persons, regardless of their religious perspectives, are very important, and that we strive to treat everyone as a person of sacred worth and value created by God. Hello, glad to see you. So what we have at Methodist, and for those of you who are here from Methodist, you understand these 5 pillars: quality, people, service, financial, and innovation and growth. And so what I'd like to do very quickly is to tell the story of who we are in that you can see we are positioned very well in the UHC with our mortality index, our length of stay, our pneumonia mortality rate, among other things. And of course, we've been named in Fortune's 100 Best Companies twice. We have the second highest number of times of anyone in that system. And of course, we have, under Dr. Mark Boom, a new paradigm for how we're going about our work with the system integration, top quality, academic excellence, and readiness. And it's understanding that patients are at the center of who we are, and that we understand that we have a relationship with our employees, our physicians, our communities, and our scientists as our research institute. But when you look at our system integration, you're going to see that we integrate our network hospitals to consistently deliver superior results. And we have 5 hospitals. The newest one is in West Houston, Katy, Texas, or West Houston. And we're going to work for top quality and service throughout the system. And we're going to continuously elevate the quality and service with which we provide our patients. We're going to continue to strive for academic excellence. We're going to leverage our extensive academic investments along with our centers of excellence to become one of the top academic medical centers of the South. And in terms of our readiness, we will partner with our physicians and build the competencies necessary to thrive in any future healthcare environment. And so as we look forward through this star, you're going to see that the patients are at the center, our employees then follow, and then we're going to see our physicians. We're going to then follow it with our scientists at the Research Institute, and we're going to look at our communities as we expand across the larger system. So under Dr. Boom's leadership and under what we're trying to do now, under this new paradigm, we're going to be looking at our system integration. We're going to launch a system-wide strategic plan. We're going to ensure consistency of that experience across the hospital system. We're going to facilitate best practices. We're going to coordinate care across the continuum. And we're going to gain efficiencies by using our scale of quality. And then we're going to measure and demonstrate those things. We're going to reorganize the quality as a true system function. We're going to extend the method experience, which means when you come into our hospitals, you are going to be personally extended the invitation to be a part of a larger whole. And we're going to continue to develop the eye care program into what we call an eye care in action benefit, where we're working for the possibility of having our employees give as much as 8 hours to community service, paid by us to do things within the community. And then we're going to maintain and enhance service to physicians and the communities that we serve. We're also going to look at academic excellence as we can do forward through our research institute with Dr. Mario Ferrari, Ed Jones, who serves as our Chief Operating Officer, Dr. Jim Musser, who serves as our Deputy Chair, and our scientists as we move to become a new academic center. And then in terms of readiness, we're going to build system-wide physician platforms, develop population management competencies, leverage enhanced R&T, our internet programs, and continue to develop our footprint across the country. And then in terms of people, in 2011 alone, we had 260,000 applications that were received from 89,000 applicants. Some 2,800 new employees have been hired by the Methodist system this last year, and I work in a variety of areas as the Vice President of Spiritual Care. First of all, I am the executive sponsor to what we call the Spiritual Care Committee. This is a committee that reports to the board of the hospital. Dr. Steve Wendy, who's the pastor, senior pastor, First Methodist Church in downtown Houston, serves as the chair. And then we have a very distinguished group of persons who serve on this committee. John Bookout, our former president, Stuart Dobbs, one of our fine physicians, Connie Dyer, Bishop Janice Riggle-Huey, Dr. Jim Jackson, senior pastor of Chapelwood, Greg Nelson, Dr. Tom Pace, who's at St. Luke's in Houston, Dr. Keith Reeves, Elizabeth Waring, Judge Ewing Werline, who is our chairman of the board, B.T. Williamson, who's the assistant to the bishop, and then Sandra Gale Wright, who's one of our board members. But I also, this last year, was given the opportunity not only to become the executive sponsor to the Spiritual Care Committee, but also the executive sponsor to the Biomedical Ethics Council. We have biomedical committees at each of our hospitals, but now we're developing a system whereby we're making sure that all of our system policies are consistent across the board. We're working with Baylor College of Medicine and its ethics department. That'd be Dr. Brody, Courtney Bruce, and Mary Majumder. And they are very committed to helping us build a system-wide presence as we go across all of our 5 hospitals. It'll include not only an opportunity to visit with our CEOs, but we're going to have an education day at each of those hospitals, tailored specifically for them. There will be 2 members from each of the hospitals that will be on a council that meets quarterly, of which I will serve as the executive sponsor. Big day, big news, lots of good work, and it literally is the point of the spear as we're beginning to look at so many things. But one of the other things that's happening is that we're trying to develop metrics on how we begin to move forward with chaplain care across the system. As you can see from this slide, you'll see on the left column our hospitals. You'll see in the second column the admissions that we had in 2011, followed by our chaplain visits, our lay ministers visits, the combined total of them, and then a ratio. Our lay ministers are actually persons who are not paid by the hospital. They're persons who have been acquired and been examined. They have been fully vetted. They are volunteers of the hospital system. Each of our hospitals have persons who have been a part of our volunteer system, and they're assigned to spiritual care. And under the work of the chaplains, they are assigned opportunities to make hospital visits. So what you can see from here is that we had almost 80,000 admissions. Our chaplains by themselves made 102,000 visits. Our lay ministers made an additional 35,000 visits, giving a total of 130,000 visits against 80,000 admits. Which means that we have an average of 1.7 visits per patient while they're in our hospital system. We are trying to put metrics to our chaplains' visits so that we can be able to show how we're creating a spiritual environment of care throughout the system. Now, this does not include the visits or the works that are being done by our chaplains as it relates to staff. This is just patients. And of course, when you have 13,000 employees in the Methodist system, that also is something that we work with very diligently. In terms of service, a Methodist will be for the southern United States what is now only found on the other 2 coasts in the Midwest. and that is a leading academic medical center. And what we will see is that we will be it, and we will work hard at becoming that. In terms of finances, let's talk about what Methodist does. In 2001, you can see that we had roughly about $20 million that we had in income above expenses. And as you can see, as the route continues, we have steadily grown. A high of just about 180 million in 2009, and in 2011, 160 million. Total assets puts us as one of the largest units that the United Methodist Church has in the world. You can see that as of 2011, we have roughly 3.3 billion in assets, which is important in terms of building strength for what we're trying to do to offer the best medical care that we possibly can. As we move forward, we also understand that we have a compassionate role of being able to serve the underserved and the uninsured. Methodist Hospital last year gave 8% of its $2 billion budget to charity and community care. That's a big number. If you're a church goer, you know what a tithe is. Well, that's almost a tithe. 8% is almost 10%. But we also do a variety of things for community benefits of persons and clinics that are going on in our area. We know that there are people who are going to be needing what these clinics need. They would not be coming to us, but we want to support them in their work. Through our Community Work Groups Committee, which is chaired by Connie Dyer and serviced by Kathy Easter, we have the responsibility of receiving and making grants. But the one thing about it is we cannot offer in grants more than 25% of their total income. So we try to be able to become a player, but not own what they're doing. And so it's very critical to understand that we put in several $1 million every year in addition to what we do at the hospital to help community clinics throughout the greater Houston area. In terms of innovation and growth, you can see that we're located throughout the Houston region. You can see the Methodist Hospital at the Medical Center, Sugar Land of the Southwest, Methodist West Houston, which opened a year ago this last December on the Katy Freeway, Methodist Willowbrook Hospital on the northwest, and San Jacinto on the far east in Baytown. But you can also see that we have diagnostic and imaging centers throughout the city, and those also serve as emergency rooms for people who need to have immediate care. In terms of market share, you can see that Methodist has right at 13% of the market share. And we also have these hospitals as they're listed throughout the region. And we also have collaborations. Not only are we continue to have a collaboration with Baylor College of Medicine, but Cornell, Rice, Houston, A&M, and New York Presbyterian Hospital, as well as Texas Children's Hospital. Now I want to visit just a minute about the challenges facing American hospitals, because this is something that we all are very much aware of. There's a lot of news, there's a lot of conversation that's going on in our country right now. And it's very important to understand some of the things that are going on. Now, most problems, if you can notice this, if we just kind of like Delbert here, go away if you just wait long enough. It might look like I'm standing motionless, but I'm actively waiting for our problems to go away. I don't know why this works, but it does. Or, like J. Paul Getty, without the element of uncertainty, the bringing off of even the greatest business triumph would be dull, routine, and eminently unsatisfying. Or, as Charles Darwin says, it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one that's the most responsive to change. Now let's talk about the expenses of what it is in the world in terms of hospital cost. You can see the red line and how it has gone up. You can see the various countries that are listed. And you can see the dots that represent those amounts of money that those particular places have as an average cost for life expectancy among these countries. If you look to the far right, you'll see the United States. We're really well outside what would be considered a part of the rest of the world. But then what you're also going to see is the scary income statements. On your left, you'll see our revenue. That's the way we understand it in our United States government. $2.2 trillion. You see individual income tax at about $900 billion. Social Security, insurance tax, your FICA. at about $865 billion, corporate income tax, and others. But look to the right, and you'll see the entitlement programs at 20%, Medicare at 22%, unemployment insurance and other entitlements at $553 billion. That adds up to 58% of our budget. We're spending well over $3.5 trillion against a $2.2 trillion in income. You can also see that its entitlement is going to find ourselves into a real world of hurt. By the year 2025, we're going to see that our entitlement spending is going to go past our revenue. That becomes a real issue for hospitals and for all of us. So we can say that this is basically unsustainable. We cannot continue to live that way. Revenue is already being squeezed and our ability to cost shift is threatened. Pressure is mounting to assume risk. Physicians are moving to larger groups and employments, and markets are consolidating, and Wall Street has been busy. But at Methodist, we are striving to create a position of strength in that we do have a high-performing academic medical center with international reach with Dr. Ferrari. We have a network of community hospitals, each well-positioned in their markets, extending throughout the Houston Metroplex. We have a strong balance sheet, as you've seen. We have solid physician relationships, patient satisfaction, and superior quality scores. And the other piece, which I'm most proud of, is we've engaged our employees and physicians who exemplify our I-CARE values: integrity, compassion, accountability, respect, and excellence. And we embrace our faith-based approach to care. So this is where I, for one, really need for us to concentrate our time this afternoon. What are the continuing challenges facing the faith-based hospitals? The first is that system policies must be in alignment with the church it's specifically related to. And that's specifically for us, the Book of Discipline of the United Methodist Church. This would include specific concerns as it relates to pregnancy terminations, research regarding stem cells and genetics, end-of-life issues, and the ever-growing need for advanced directives. That's one of the reasons I'm really very excited about the Biomedical Ethics Council at the Methodist Hospital System and how we're coordinating this with Baylor College of Medicine and that wonderful Baylor team of Baruch Brody and Courtney Bruce and Marie Majunder. What's going to happen is that this actually is in the Spiritual Care Cost Center. And it says to me a lot when the hospital is able to put its biomedical piece under spiritual care. And it says to me that we're really very concerned to see that we have system policies that are consistent across the board. We do have wonderful biomedical ethics committees at each of our hospitals. They have very engaged committees. They meet regularly. They have consults. But through Baylor College of Medicine and through Baruch Brody and his team, we're actually going to have consults that are going to be available to each of those hospitals as they begin to deal with some very difficult issues from time to time. But part of it is that we, as a faith-based hospital, understand that we are different. We're not state-owned. We're not owned by the community. We're a part of the church. And we actually see ourselves as a part of the ministry of the church. And so one of the concerns that I have is that those system policies do need to be consistent. And we do need to understand how it works. For instance, in pregnancy termination, let's talk about that. The only way a pregnancy termination can happen at Methodist Hospital is if the life of the mother is in danger or if the child is not able to live longer than 28 days because of a fetal anomaly. That would be fatal. That's it. If you were at a state hospital, there would be other things that could happen. If you were in a Catholic hospital, it wouldn't happen at all. But in a Methodist hospital, there is a possible of a maybe. But the other piece is, if that pregnancy termination is to happen, there's a special plan by which it has to move forward through our system, of which I sit on the committee. A physician has to make the request. It then is pulled together through a very important subcommittee that has the responsibility to review all the facts, of which I'm on. And then if that proves to be that the case is the mother's life is in danger, or there is a fetal anomaly that would not allow the child to live longer than 28 days or less, and it can be proven in such a way, and I, as the church's representative, were to agree, then it can be done. If, on the other hand, those facts are not proven to be true, I say no, and it goes to the next group up, of which I'm still on, with the chairman of the Department of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. And then at that point, if I still say no, then it still doesn't happen. What we've already seen is that at Methodist Hospital, we're seeing more and more cases of where we're not having to make this decision any longer. There are very, very few pregnancy terminations at Methodist. We believe, it's through the Book of Discipline, that it's very important to see the worth of life. And we understand that we do not deal with anything that deals with anything less than these two major issues. And it's very clear. This has passed our policy committee, it's passed our spiritual care committee, and it's gone through the rigors of everything that you need to do in order for the Methodist Church to have full ownership. And so in my position, I'm not only the Vice President of Spiritual Care, but part of my role is to represent the hospital in terms of its concerns related to the Book of Discipline of how the Methodist Church interprets such things. The next challenge is the desire to serve the uninsured and the underserved in our community. Without the proper payer mix, it creates an issue related to an unfunded mission. That's why it's important for Methodists to have a very, very strong balance sheet. No money, no mission. As much as the church and society look to the faith-based hospital to offer this kind of compassionate care, it does need to be funded. Faith-based hospitals are required to fund at least 4% to charity care. That's a government mandate. The Methodist Hospital System made commitments up to 8% this last year. So it's very critical to understand that society does look to us, and there are a number of politicians and others who, of course, have a lot of concerns about Obamacare and other things. But the question is, there are a lot of underinsured and uninsured people that need care. Where are they going to get it, and how is it going to be paid for? That's always a big question. But the truth comes down to the bottom line, and that is you can't do something you don't have the funds to do. And so even the grandest of missions, if you do not have the funds to make it happen, it can't be done. We have a wonderful group of physicians who give of their time. We have physicians that go around the world. We have physicians who go locally. We have nurses and others who give of their time. We have many in our hospital system that give of their time free and make a benefit out of it to many people who are underserved. But there are some expenses, even in the most important cases, that does require some funding. And at the Methodist Hospital System, I'm proud to say that we have a system whereby we're able to try to discern who best is entitled to these kinds of commitments. And it's always very important to see every individual as a person of worth. And it's also important to see that we have a role as a faith-based hospital to serve as many as we possibly can. I know that when you walk into our facility, you see a first-class facility. And we want it to be first class. But we also want to be seen as faith-based, as trying to live out our life and our faith as we possibly can in a grand way. If I'm not mistaken, it was right about $540 million that we committed to either community or charity care last year. $114 million of that went specifically to people who could not pay their bills, who were discounted. But there are a number of things that we do for the larger community and for others that take care of that in terms of what we're doing. The other piece for a faith-based hospital that, of course, you're very much aware of is the heavy responsibility of philanthropy to fund facilities, equipment, personnel, and the development of new centers of excellence for medical care and treatment. With the advancement of technology and medical care in recent years, the challenge is always to stay up with the latest innovations and services. Without philanthropy and the contributions of friends and grateful patients, the faith-based hospital has no federal, state, or local community support outside the payments made through Medicare and Medicaid policies. What that means is we do need to show a profit. Or in the church, as we said, when I was a senior pastor at Moody, we needed to have excess revenue in order to be able to offer the kinds of ministries that we needed to do. We are a not-for-profit organization. None of our board of directors are paid. We're all volunteers. We're part of a faith-based institution. And so it's very important to understand that we have a responsibility as grateful patients and friends of the hospital to commit that. Methodist is in the process of completing a $200 million campaign. We're almost there. $197 million against $200 million. We're trying real hard to get that last few million in. But this is really an exciting time for us because up until recently we didn't have a foundation, but the Methodist Hospital does now. And we're working very hard at being able to create new options. And as we begin to build our system, we will begin to see it grow into our other 4 hospitals as well. And then this is very dear to me. I remember as a pastor in a local church, I was in some communities where there were no chaplains at a hospital. It was just the pastors, the priests, the rabbis, and others, and good lay people who would make visits on friends that they knew within the hospital system. When I was in Galveston, and I was a senior pastor at Moody, for years UTMB did not have any kind of a chaplains department. But it was through a conversation with Dr. Julian Bird, who were at Methodist at the time, and some others that we created the first chaplains department at UTMB. And of course that was exciting to us because Moody Church was a part of that, and we helped to fund it as it began. John Riley, who was on our staff here at Methodist, became the director of pastoral services at UTMB, and he's still there today. And has proven himself very well and has gone through Hurricane Ike and is still standing strong at UTMB. But the truth of it is, not all hospitals have chaplains. But in a faith-based hospital, we understand that's a role. But the thing to remember is that the chaplain's personnel and services is not an income-generating department. Therefore, there's always a need to prove the need for chaplains and the contributions they add to setting in a clinical setting. Metrics related to patient visits and encounters are now expected in order to prove the need for their existence. The chaplains also offer support to medical personnel and other staff as they deal with disenfranchised grief as it relates to patient care. Also, faith-based hospitals also look to chaplains to foster a value-centered culture regarding the hospital's mission and purpose. At Methodist, we have directors of chaplains. When I first went to Methodist in 2005, we had one director at the Methodist Hospital. We now have a director at Sugar Land, West Houston, Willowbrook, and a very fine vice president who oversees the chaplains as a part of her responsibilities at San Jacinto. And what I've seen is that we've added the directors and we've added chaplains, the numbers have gone up. We've seen stronger support of lay ministers. We've seen stronger visits, as you've seen. Sugar Land is leading the way in many ways in terms of actual ratios. They are actually able to see their patients 2.5 times in their length of stay. But we're seeing that as they create stronger lay ministry programs and our chaplains, the numbers are going up. So as you can see earlier, what we've done in a previous slide, it's very important that every patient is seen as someone of real worth and value. Not everyone may need to see a chaplain. We know that. And we go when called. But we also go and are making ourselves available to staff and are available to patients as they need us on an as-needed basis. But it's very critical that a chaplain is available, and we do have that available at Methodist. Downtown, we have 24/7 service, and we take pride in the fact that we have chaplains 24 hours a day. And so we're doing that in the same in all of our systems, and all of our directors are beginning to work for reaching that as a goal. So when I think of the continuing challenges of faith-based hospital, I think of a variety of things, from compassion and mission, to chaplains, to philanthropy, to the system policies that we have to carry out as a faith-based, church-owned hospital, of which we are. The one thing that will never change, and we're going to see this, and this has been reiterated by Dr. Mark Boone, by Ron Gerardo before him, is that we are a faith-based ministry. We have the I-CARE values. We're patient-centered in terms of our care, service quality, and safety. We continue to want to have community benefit support. We want to have full engagement in our physicians. We're committed to education and research. And we are always available to the attention to staff needs. And so the Methodist Hospital and I have come some distance. 66 years ago, this last February, I was born there. My birth certificate is hanging on my wall. And Josie Roberts is looking at me every day. And you'll see she's still looking at me right here in this slide. And then, of course, you can see where we began with our first hospital building, Fannin and Rosalie.
Is that Mrs. Fondren under there?
That is Mrs. Fondren under there,
Yeah.
Dr. Michael DeBakey, and of course you can see as we move forward through the system. So it's been a great journey, and the good thing is we're not over, and neither am I. I have never felt more energized or more excited about ministry or about what the work of the hospital is doing than I am today. When I was a young pastor, I visited this hospital. When I was a middle-aged pastor, I visited this hospital. Now I'm living in the hospital. I try to get there by about 6 or 6:15 in the morning in order to see patients and doctors well before they begin their rounds. And of course, we just go all day long and just enjoy it. But it's a great ministry, and I'm so proud to be a part of this faith journey for me. To think back as an 18-year-old kid who was probably thinking about medicine, suddenly called by God to move into ministry, and then make that choice. And then as it worked out, just as it worked out, called to have the opportunity to come back into this ministry as a calling is just as exciting as can be. And so what we're doing at Methodist is we're trying to embed spiritual care in the system. We embed it not just with the chaplains, but through our Education Institute, with On Being a Doctor essays. We're doing it through business practice with our ethics hotlines. We're doing it through the Biomedical Ethics Council and its committees as it's moving through the system. We're doing it with the Spiritual Care Committee as it's involving itself in all the aspects of the hospital. And we're doing it in HR, in human relations. In order to be hired by Methodist, there is an understanding, there's an eye care quotient that you're also required to take as a part of your examination in terms of how we understand your terms of integrity, compassion, accountability, and respect. And we even have in our employee satisfaction survey embedded questions related to those questions so that we can understand our different units, where they are in Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. Tier 1 and 2, of course, are just where you need to be, to understand that our units fully understand that they have a compassionate, integrity, accountability, and respect and excellence understanding of what they're to be about. And HR helps us to embed that, and we're able to see how each of our units are doing in those areas. So this is our journey, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
Charles, when I go to Methodist Hospital and you walk in, you see this beautiful atrium with water flowing, 3 dolphins jumping up. You see Jesus, you see a statue of Christ reaching down and touching. But that whole area, that whole atrium area, the entrance, to me, and I want to ask you, what I want to lead to, it looks like you have made a great effort at that institution so that when you walk in, your first impression is not the sterile hospital of the past, but something that is caring for the soul of the individuals that walk in, that's already nurturing them. Is there really a intentionality to what you see when you walk into that entrance?
Yes, there is. In fact, in each of our hospitals, you'll find a statue of Jesus healing the woman in each of them. But you also will find that you immediately enter any of our hospitals, it's easy to find the chapel. In fact, at West Houston, at Willowbrook, and at Sugar Land, our 3 most recent additions, as soon as you come in the front door, there is a way to get to the chapel, and you're able to understand immediately that there is a cross and a flame that represents who we are. But the one thing about the Crane Garden is it's not just a lobby. It also serves a multi-purpose. We have banquets, we have dinners, we have presentations, we have lectures. We, through Fine Arts, have a variety of artists that come and play this afternoon, and others, the Houston Symphony and others come as a way of increasing. And when you're in a hospital setting, as we all have been, there are times when you need to step out of the room as a caregiver, and sometimes, if you're able as a patient, to see something a little different and to experience something soft. And what you'll see is a variety of things throughout that hospital system, in each of our hospital lobbies, a chance to be able to see something soft, pleasant, and warm. And yes, we are very proud of our faith-based presence. And we understand that we have a variety of faiths, not just the Christian faith, but we respect all faiths. And we understand that we're a community. In fact, if you saw in the Houston Chronicle yesterday, Houston has now been claimed to be the highest multi-ethnic community in the United States, even above New York. And so now we are really in a center of what Stephen Kleinberg has said. We're 40 years ahead of where everybody else is in the United States in terms of our ethnicity. And so, as you know, in Fort Bend County, for instance, there is no plurality, there is no majority race in Fort Bend. It's all broken down evenly.
Very good. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Sure. Yeah.
I think it's so fantastic that spiritual care is involved in the bioethics. Yes. That was my experience at MD Anderson. And what I'm wondering, too, is are you all included, or can you establish a way to meet with the faculty when they experience death of patients?
Well, our chaplains are always involved in that. And we have chaplains throughout the biomedical ethics committees at each of our hospitals, and their turn too. I'm really impressed with the quality that we have on those committees and the compassionate care that are seeing it. Just this afternoon, I was looking at the blackboard of Baylor College of Medicine that Dr. Baruch Brody was giving a lecture to our students at Baylor College of Medicine. Outstanding piece of work. And so the good news for us as chaplains and for others of us is that we're not alone. We're all part of a family. We all understand it. And of course the key for me, when I first came to Methodist 7 years ago, the question was asked to me after he had the eye care value. He said, well, what are we going to do next? Well, like looking to me to say, what's the next step? And I said, well, you know, it's up to us now. Once we've got it here, now we need to embed it in the system. And I think one of the greatest achievements I think that's happened at Methodist over the last few years is it's not just housed in the chaplains department. We're not siloed. We want to take spiritual care and we want to move it throughout the entire system. And so that seems to be what's going on, and we got great people there.
Anybody else?
Charles, how do you see our work here at the Institute of Spirituality and Health relating to what you do? It sounds like we have a lot in common.
Yes, we do. I'm very proud of John Graham and Ken Pargament. And in fact, you would know that we're working on a special grant with Dr. Pargament now, Methodist and St. Luke's and MD Anderson and Memorial Hermann. Have I forgotten anybody, John? You're working as the chairman of that group, or working with the Methodist Research Institute and Dr. Scott Parazinski and our grant writers to present a grant to help the Texas Medical Center reach new levels, and we're doing it through the Institute of Spirituality and Health. Not doing it just as Methodists, we're doing it as a whole team for the Texas Medical Center.
Let me ask you,
If I can, a hard question. Okay, you have $3 billion. The average person looking at that would say, well, why are you charging so much for care? Why don't you come back? But I think you've already answered it by pointing out how important it is that you have this locus of money that in order to carry on the ministry in the future. But would you address why the prices still remain high, even though there must be some measure of profit in a nonprofit institution?
Well, we do know that we're in a very competitive market. In order to have the nurses we have, the doctors we have, the staff we have, they need to have a competitive salary. I do know that our salaries are at about, I think, the 55th percentile, if I'm not mistaken, for the Texas Medical Center. We're not the highest, we're not the lowest, but we're in that range. I probably need to be corrected on that, but I do know that it takes money to run hospital. And, we still have to pay insurance, electricity, there are lights to be paid for, supplies to be paid for. There's a lot of things that go into medical care. Just like you go to a restaurant, you don't pay just for the food. You're paying for everything that goes with the preparation of that food, including the room that it's in, the plates that it's on. We're always looking for ways to cost cut, and we're always looking for ways to be frugal. But when you're needing the latest equipment, when you're needing the kinds of investments that you need to be able to move forward with the latest of technology, our electronic medical records, those need to be up and going by 2014. We're working hard on that. IT need to be able to communicate with other doctors in our system as well as through the Texas Medical Center. Those all cost. But I do say that at Methodist we're very budget conscious. If our CFO looks at us daily, all of them do, and if we're in danger of having more expenses than we have income, there's an immediate word put out that we need to be able to cut back immediately on where we are and what we have to do. Medical care is expensive, there's no question about it, and there's a lot of entitlements that are being requested, and there's a lot of the latest things that are needed in terms of surgery and care of individuals. All that fits. And so we're doing our best to try to be very reasonable, but it does cost.
I have one more question.
Not really a question, a statement. You showed that graph that showed the United States way to the right
Yes.
in expenditure for medical care.
Yeah.
But isn't it true that really it's hard to compare nation to nation? The quality of care in one nation is not really comparable to another. There are many factors that go on, and would we want the amount of money we give to medical care today, would we want it moved to what, say, they are in Europe? The reason I say that, the rest of the world comes to the United States to be educated. So there's something here that the rest of the world wants to come here to experience. And I'm talking about physicians coming here to train. They don't come here because we do not have what they want. They come here because we do, and that is an expensive proposition. But would you address that? That comparison slide, I think, really needs to be commented on.
Well, in some ways, the rest of the world needs to get a little closer to where we are rather than us going back to where they are. That's true. The truth of it is that we do have some of the best medical care in the world in the United States. And that's a lot of what the discussion is going on in the United States now with our Republican candidates as others, talking about the need for medical care. But I can say there's a lot of people who when they have a knee blown out, or they have a hip, where you might be in another country and you just live with it. In the United States, there's hope. You can get a new knee, you can get a new hip. Or if you have cancer, rather than just admitting the fact that you are terminal, in the United States, through great hospitals like MD Anderson and others, and Methodist, you're given an opportunity for a future, remission, and hope. And so, yes, it costs money. And yes, we're proud of what we're doing. I'm glad to be living in the 21st century. I'm glad I'm on this side of the 20th century. When I stop to think about the medical care, even in cardiac arrests, in the 1940s, I remember doctors saying they just put a wet washcloth on your head and prayed for you. Today, if you come into our hospitals and you've got a problem, within 90 minutes, you're on an operating table and you're getting some stents.
Right.
And so the thing that bothers us, of course, is the fact that we all want to have that, but it does cost something to do it. The other alternative is to do nothing. And, of course, the prices can go down real quickly when you do nothing. But if we want to be able to have these wonderful new opportunities for a quality of life that's high and strong, to see our average age grow to an older age, I'll admit it, I'm 66. I don't have quite the swing speed on my golf swing that I used to have at 40, but, I'm still swinging the club. And I intend to keep swinging that for another 20, 30 years. and I'm looking for good health care to help me do it.
Thank you. Oh, we got one more.
I want to say one thing. I was a patient in Methodist Hospital 2 years ago, and it was one of the best medical experiences I've had.
And what I would comment on is, of course, I had good physicians, but the nurse care was what was so outstanding for me. I never had anybody walk in my room. I was there for a very short stay, just overnight. But I never had anybody walk in my room with a computer in their hand or with a piece of paper in their hand. They walked in and looked at me and talked to me eye to eye. And I was so astounded by that. I mean, it's a very unusual experience to have because I've had some other hospital experiences. That was very unusual. And I have raved about that to everyone I have, ever since I've been there. And I'm sure they used a computer. I'm sure they were not just not doing that, but they went outside the room to do it. When they were in my room, they were completely concentrated on me. It was amazing.
What we're trying to do with the Methodist experience.
We're trying to create an experience that is tailored specifically to you, and where possible, we're able to hopefully, in your admissions, find out things like your favorite color or your favorite drink, soft drink, so that when you do come in, we're able to sort of figure that out a little ahead of time to make your stay a little more comfortable. So we're trying very hard.
Well, a lot of times being in a hospital as a patient is a frightening experience.
Yes, it is.
And the environment is so important, and the touch and the tone of voice and the look of the people that are taking care of you is extremely important. And
Well, I want
you've
to
got
recognize two outstanding chaplains that we have here, and that's Molly Teock and Stacy Pell. And they're right there on that floor of those nurses, and they're doing a great
It's
job.
wonderful.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Good job, Carl. Impressed. A lot of good info there.
Thank you, Jim.
Seem to be proud of that, what you guys are doing over there.
I'll tell you what, we're a team. We're a team right
Very
here.
good.
This is a great handout, isn't it?
Nice to see you. How's everything going over on your side of the street across from St. Paul's?
Staying so busy. We're getting ready to go on spring break from school, so that's nice to have